He is the voice of college football. Don't mess around with this guy.
What's going on, man?
You'll be calling Texas Tech TCU.
Yes, sir.
So let me just say that everybody gets, these ratings. I don't get all worked up. I mean, I said I don't buy Clemson yet, but teams should have a right to improve.
Sure.
I think Oregon should get a mulligan. All new people go to the South, get beat by Georgia. I think they're actually better than people think. Get half a mulligan. Call it a.
So should LSU get a mulligan too? Well, apparently they did get one.
Well, I do think if you have new team, new quarterback, new staff, and your first game is a tough one, and you don't play well, it's like, well, in the NFL you get preseason games.
Sure.
In college, it's like go.
Yeah.
It's hard.
I mean, there's so much to unpack with the first rankings, and
let's look at them.
Your sentiment, yeah, I would love to. We can put them up so that everyone kind of knows, that's watching.
Okay.
I think your sentiment is wrong, though, which is like, you're basically saying it doesn't matter. Here's the top six up on the screen. Tennessee's number 1, Ohio State 2, Georgia 3, Clemson 4, Michigan 5, Alabama 6. Your sentiment is kind of like, well, it doesn't really matter.
No, my sentiment is, I've been told forever how great Ohio State is. I watched Oregon walk in there last year and punch them in the forehead. I was told by every Buckeye fan how great they were last year, and Michigan physically rolled them.
Yeah.
Is until they face.
Wait, I'm sorry. Are we ranking last year's Ohio State team or this year's? I'm confused.
I have a hard time with Ohio State.
Well, see what you just did is exactly what the committee did, and what they didn't do, and what you failed to do is rate these teams on what they do this year. A team's life cycle is 12 months. That's it, yeah. Right? And what you see reflected in these committees' rankings that they gave us a night ago are basically ghosts of championship past, reflecting how they view these teams. You just did it right there with Ohio State, and the committee did it with Clemson. The ghosts of Deshaun Watson and Trevor Lawrence and Hunter Renfrow forced them to put Clemson with a worse resume ahead of Michigan and ahead of TCU.
Yeah, I think Michigan's better than Clemson.
I do, too. I think that TCU's resume is far better than Clemson right now.
Them up there.
And Clemson was a victim of brand bias, and that's what's inherently bad about our sport is that there's still brand bias. So, and here's why it matters. And this is one of my big takeaways from last night. Everybody always just, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It'll play itself out. But that's wrong.
Right.
That's wrong. Let me tell you why. It is wrong to think that these rankings don't matter because of 2 reasons. Number 1, this is how you build your resume. Like, you don't make cookies and just say, like, the amount of sugar doesn't matter. Well, of course it does. It's part of the recipe. This is the recipe to get to the playoff.
Yeah.
Right? So you build your resume based on who's ranked and who's not and what happens in those games when you play those ranked teams. So that's number 1. And number 2 is this sport is still about perception, much more than maybe any other sport on the planet.
True.
So perception is how you get into the playoff, and perception is also how you become better. Why is that, Colin? This is the question you should be asking. Like, why, Joel? That's interesting. Perception. Why is perception so important?
Why?
Because we don't draft, we recruit in our sport. And so it matters what the athlete in high school thinks of the program, and more importantly, what the sentiment nationally is of a program. So when Utah and TCU are clearly not given the benefit of the doubt.
Utah?
Yes,
well,
and I can explain that until, I understand. So did LSU, but they're 10th, 5 spots higher than the AP. Yeah, I digress. Don't take me off point here. Don't take me off point.
Okay, all right. Yeah.
Perception. I'm talking about perception here.
Yeah.
And when you're recruiting, and that perception is that your program has a glass ceiling, and the burden of proof is on you because you're the little guy, and I'm a college kid, a high school kid, and I get a TCU letter or a Utah letter, then that perception seeps into how I view that program. Meanwhile, Clemson and Alabama are getting ranked this year based on ghosts of championships past. Alabama's lost a game. So the committee tells us, like, well, TCU has been behind in a few games. Oh, you mean like when Alabama was behind when the clock struck 0? I'm sorry. Wasn't that the point of the game?
But Utah, in the end, win your games. You can't get rolled.
I don't disagree with that, but you could say the same with LSU. By the way, the loss that Utah had at Florida is a far more acceptable loss than LSU losing on a neutral to Florida State in a neutral. I mean, by the way, LSU, of the top 10 teams, only team to lose at home. Only team.
But
in a sport where it's ridiculously difficult to win on the road. You look at all those losses of the one-loss teams, where'd they happen? On the road. But LSU gets the benefit of the doubt after getting trounced at home? Well, come on, give me a break.
Well,
give me a break. What are we doing?
Well, your world sounds very idealistic. Okay, it's perfect. We're only judging on this. But
this year. But if
this
the life cycle of these teams is 1 year.
But college football,
am I wrong?
A little bit's an invitational more than it is a playoff.
Exactly.
Okay. But since it is, let's take the rules of invitational. So here's where history matters. If I'm dead set tied on a team, and there are going to be an invitationals, who do we invite? It's like a wedding. You like her, I don't. You like him, I don't. We got one invitation left. It's an invitational. So I am not supposed to look at and say, boy, I've seen Saban in these big games. And I've seen that coach in big games, and he stinks.
Yeah, but the point...
I give the SEC the benefit of the doubt a lot. I do. Shame on me.
Well, no, and I'm not saying that they shouldn't be given the benefit of the doubt.
I do.
By the way, I said Tennessee should be ranked 1. They're not in the AP, and I put them at number 1 based on that, right? Their win is against Alabama is the best win in the country so far. Tennessee is really good. Georgia, really good. Yeah. Bama, I still think very good. I think LSU has developed and gotten much better.
Same here.
I think Ole Miss is very good. That's 5 teams that I have in the top 15 in the country. So this is not an SEC argument. This is an argument that this committee goes in there, and I feel like their frame of mind is wrong. I think you've got to rate teams in a brandless fashion and in a 1-year model. Like, that's what this team is. By the way, Zach Evans transferred out of TCU. And this day and age in college football, more than any other, these teams are 1 year old. All of them, because of the transfer portal, because of NIL. You cannot rate teams based on what they've done in the past. I just don't agree with that. In particular, when TCU's resume is just better than Clemson. They've got 2 better wins than any wins Clemson has. They've got a better strength of schedule and better strength of record. Okay, so we both think TCU should be ahead of Clemson. But there is something to be said. I'll give you an example. So there are times I have in an invitational, which is college football's got a little bit of a feel to that, right? Is that you're I guess you invite me on here, and it's my history of great segments that keeps bringing me back. That's right, or you wouldn't be here. I see what you're trying to say. I boot a lot of people to the curb. I know. I know. Bottom line show. Listen. So, but the point is, it's an ideal take. The truth is, when I watch certain teams, like I'm giving Oregon, I had this discussion yesterday with a huge college football fan who I respect. I said, when I watch Oregon play UCLA, I wouldn't even have to follow recruiting. I can tell you who's got more 4- and 5-star athletes. Okay. I'm waiting for this coaching staff, and they're doing it, to get these guys in unison. So they go to play Georgia first game. Well, Kirby's got that puppy rolling. And so Oregon looked the part against Georgia, and then you're like, new quarterback, new staff, new players, the South. I think if Oregon, right now today, I watch them visually. They have dominated Pac-12 recruiting to a large degree the last 7-8 years. They look better than UCLA. I don't care who the better coach is. They are bigger and stronger and more dynamic and faster. So part of this is what my eyes see. When I see Ohio State roll over these marginally athletic Big Ten teams, I struggle with it. I don't know who Ohio State is until they play Michigan. I will not know. I know what Alabama is. Good, not great. I've seen it. And by the way, this weekend. But none of this is telling me that you should rate based on history. I thought you were trying to make an argument about history. No, I'm saying is the ideal arguments to me always, you got to be careful about it, because I do consider who your coach is and his history in big games, and do his teams get better. Like you'll see sometimes teams, Cliff Kingsbury, his teams get worse. But this is totally unfair to a guy like Max Duggan. Right? Like, again, this is a guy that's put himself in the Heisman Trophy race. I by many accounts, when you ask voters, Max Duggan, the quarterback for TCU, is probably 4th in the country right now in terms of the Heisman Trophy race. That's fair. So, Quentin Johnston, their wide receiver, one of the best wide receivers in all of college football. He's good. TCU is the only team in America that averages 300 passing yards, 200 rushing yards, and has scored 20 touchdowns, both passing and rushing. Like, none of that enters into the equation. Why? Because Clemson won a couple of championships years ago. Like, it doesn't make any sense. Let me ask you this. Who has better players? Who recruits at a higher level?
I'm asking.
Clemson. I hear what you're saying.
Clemson looks bigger, faster, stronger than TCU.
I hear what you're saying, but they don't play that way.
Well, they by the way,
Lakers have historically better players than everybody else. They suck.
But when I watch
so like at some point, don't we have to look at what's going on the field?
Great example. When I watch the Lakers, they're not dynamic enough.
Well, neither is Clemson. So hold on.
No, different. Clemson's dynamic. They're not
dynamic.
They're not playing well.
Out.
They're not playing well.
They had to pull their quarterback.
Why not? He played like crap. I watched the whole game. But that team
to beat Syracuse at home.
Well, Syracuse always gives Clemson trouble, don't they?
I mean, Notre Dame just rolled up and thumped Syracuse in the Dome.
Clemson and Syracuse have a weird rivalry thing where those games are always close.
You cannot be serious.
I feel
like
serious.
McEnroe right now.
All right, I got something else I want to get to.
All right, let's go. Let's move on.
Okay, hold on. So, it was crazy. I got this late because the Michigan State tunnel thing.
Oh, what a disaster.
It was. And so, when stuff like this happens, I never want to be first. Like, let's just watch it.
Yeah.
And I want to hear stuff and see video. You saw that Michigan State tunnel thing.
Yeah.
My takeaway was, who is this poor Michigan kid getting attacked? That was my takeaway on the video I saw. Am I missing anything? My interpretation of what I saw was Michigan kid getting attacked by like 4 kids. But I don't have all the information outside of like viral video.
Yeah, and that's why I've tried to stay away from exactly what you're talking about.
This bothered me.
My take is more from
this really bothers me.
Of course, and it should bother you. It should bother anybody. It should bother you whether it's happening in the tunnel at Michigan or on the street corner, right? With security cam footage. This was a bad look all around, and I've stayed away from trying to place all the blame on any one team, coach, or player, right? And so my take has been really threefold. Colin, when it comes to this incident, number one, I do not think it's the inherent issue of the stadium. We've been playing games for 95 years at Michigan Stadium, and it's not been a big deal for a long time.
Right.
And then it is this game, and that's unfortunate. The second thing that I would say is I always think about what would I be thinking if I was a teammate sitting in the locker room and this is happening, right? And I'm not involved. I'm a teammate, whether it's a Michigan State teammate or a Michigan teammate. And the bottom line is if I'm a teammate, I would be incredibly frustrated at the incident overall. And in particular, because if I was a Michigan State teammate of these guys that instigated this brawl, now all of a sudden the entire program is painted with a broad brush. We're undisciplined, we're out there and we're reckless and this and that. And that's wrong. I would be incredibly frustrated. And now all of a sudden they're going to get all those distractions. They've got 8 players suspended. They're pouring over the program. I feel bad for the players at Michigan, and I feel bad for the players at Michigan State as well that weren't involved in this. And then the last thing that I would say is I just want to make sure that this runs its course. If law enforcement is involved, let it run its course, right? I don't want to go in there guns blazing with some hot take about any one person or coach in particular, because I want this investigation to run its course so that it can come to a quick conclusion.
I want to see, Klatt, let me see your top 10. This is Klatt's top 10.
Klatt's top 10.
So let me
otherwise known as reality. So I've got number 1 Tennessee.
So I'll say this. I like Oregon more than Clemson. I don't have a problem with any of this. I like Oregon. I'd put Oregon 1 spot ahead of Clemson.
I mean, Oregon did get their doors blown off.
Okay.
You can't just tell me that that game didn't happen.
Okay, I'm not.
So I'm giving them kind of the benefit of the doubt, but at some point you just got to be like, that game did happen. So I've got them 7, Oregon 8, UCLA 9, and Utah 10.
Let me ask you this in this perfect top 10. I think Michigan's better than Ohio State. I saw them both play Penn State, and I saw Michigan had an 18-1 first down advantage. That Michigan game should have been 70-7. Penn State couldn't compete. Penn State competed with Ohio State.
I'll give you an analogy. You love analogies. Those 2 cars, if Ohio State and Michigan are cars, I know.
I like the blue one.
Well, I know that the blue one has 5th gear. but I've seen the red one go to 6th and 7th, and I don't know if the blue one has those
When did you see that?
Last week against Penn State. Against Penn State, the 9-minute mark and 26 seconds of that game, they're down 21-16.
They're down.
And within a minute 9 of game time and 6 snaps of the football, they're up 30-21.
Did you say they were down?
That is 7th gear.
You say they were down?
Yes, I did say they were down. By the way, they were also on the road. I could go in a long dissertation of how difficult it is to play on the road in any conference. But 6 snaps of the football, they all of a sudden they go down the field in 3 score and 3 plays and score. JT Tuimoloau, game wrecker, strip sack, gets it. Next play, touchdown. And it's like, what just happened? James Franklin in that entire place, 108,000, went from we're going to beat Ohio State to, oh my God, we just got an avalanche of Buckeyes poured on our head.
Congratulations,
7th gear.
Ohio State, for coming from behind. My blue car didn't trail.
Wow.
My blue car had a lead, 500 yards.
I'm not saying that Michigan's bad. I'm just saying that I've seen 5th gear from them. I haven't seen 6th and 7th.
Okay.
I've seen it from the Buckeyes.
All right. Playing on the road, I'm not saying it's not hard, but sometimes...
Oh, you're so wrong, and I'm going to back it up with data. Here he goes again with his sentiment, and of the top 12 teams in the CFP rankings, there have been 7 losses. Only one of them have been at home, and that was LSU at home, right? So, it doesn't happen. Look at the best teams in the country. Where are all their losses? Oregon lost basically on the road to Georgia. USC lost on the road to Utah. UCLA lost on the road to Oregon. Alabama lost on the road to Tennessee.
Okay.
I mean, this is the only place that teams lose. So now all of a sudden you've got Bama and Tennessee on the road. Watch out.
I'd make an argument the better team won. Alabama's not as good as Tennessee.
Okay,
Oregon's
that's fine.
not as good as Georgia.
I'm saying at the top of college football, when you get to the point where you're playing a top 15 team in their building, really hard to win. Really hard to win.
Alabama wins a lot of road games.
Well, really, do they? Actually, in the last 2 years, they've struggled on the road. Remember, last year, 2-point win against Florida. They lost against Texas A&M, 4 overtimes against Auburn. This year, 1-point win, and they should have lost against Texas. Then they go on the road, and they got beat by Tennessee. In fact, their defense, they give up 32 points per game on the road this year and only 7 at home. So actually, they're a really poor road team, and they're in trouble this week. That's called a data hammer that just landed on your desk.
I work here on a tightrope. I work on a tightrope. A lot of information.
You just got shoved off that tightrope.
Volatile personalities, and I make it all cook, this jambalaya of personalities.
I was a strong breeze as you're walking on that tightrope right there.
Okay, Texas Tech at TCU. You know what I love? God, I'm going to love Texas Tech knocking the doors off TCU.
I mean, if it's a great game, great. I love it.
You'll come limping back into the studio and apologize to me.
I'm not a fan of any one team. I'm just a fan of data, Colin.
Okay, his name is Joel Klatt. He's got a podcast. The guy used to just take a check and never see him. Now he works here. Now we actually make him earn his check.
That's amazing. That was good. That was good. Untrue, but very good.
Okay, so he's got a podcast 3 times a week.
It's good. Yeah. It's good.
Now he added
if you tuned in, you'd learn a little bit. Joel Klatt Show, wherever you find your podcast,
I do
folks.
go. I listen to your podcast.
You did? And you still bring those uneducated takes. That's incredible.
All right, Klattster.
These were haymakers today. This was fun.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from The Herd or go watch a few segments from other shows on FS1.